Say hello to a new friend on an old road. Take a two-lane trip of memories into mysteries unknown. Come along for the ride. Jim Hinckley's America. Jim Hinckley's America.
Hey, good morning, Keith, and everyone that's listening this morning, and everyone who will be catching this program at a later time as we do archive the live program. Glad you could join us this morning. We're going to continue with our road trip inspiration, sharing a bit of the Heartland tour. I hope that is acceptable. Thought you might like that. Anybody who knows me knows that I am not a fan of the interstate highway. It's a necessary evil, if you will. But like the song from our theme song from Joe, Woody, and the Boys, the Road Crew says, come along for the ride. And we try not to do much of the ride on the interstate highway. In the modern era, if you're going to make time, you got to take the interstate. And if you take the back roads, you've got to be prepared. You may not always find services. That's okay. It's all part of the adventure. And, I'm old enough to remember in the pre-interstate highway era, sometimes when you travel in rural areas, it was difficult to even find a gas station open on Sundays. Well, on this particular trip, Route 66 is our primary. That's what we generally do. I can't count how many times, but Route 66 is a hinge pin. It's a foundation for Jim Hinckley's American road trip inspiration. And, making stops, places like Tucumcari, New Mexico and whatnot. Always enjoyable. But on this trip, I had some other side trips to make. I shared last week a little bit of our troubles in Rushville, Arkansas, but not all was bad. I discovered the little village of Pocahontas, Arkansas. And good morning, Maggie. It's Pocahontas, Arkansas. Well, you know what? And food's a big part of my trip. Anybody who's seen me knows that I like to eat. We found Don's Steakhouse for lunch in Pocahontas, and it was a real treat. They had a great lunch special. They're located at 1511 Market Drive, which is just right there at Highway 67, just before the Black River. Had a tremendous lunch there, a lunch special with fresh catfish, grilled black pepper catfish, and hush puppies with coleslaw. God bless, was that a great lunch. That's the kind of stuff we like to eat. One of the great discoveries that I made on this trip, taking a side trip, we had left Pontiac, Illinois, early in the morning, Sunday morning, and our destination was Cuba, Missouri. Rather than hassle with St. Louis, a lot of road construction last time I went through, and I followed up, and they're still doing some bridge construction, and even on a Sunday. Oh, gosh. I joke about it, but there's a degree of seriousness in it. I feel kind of claustrophobic in any place that has more than 3 stoplights. So St. Louis has got some great and interesting neighborhoods and districts. The Forest Park area with its museums, the Delmar Loop district. I enjoy those places immensely. But I decided this time to take a little bit of a side trip. And so we ended up going to wander over to Hannibal, Missouri, across the river there, work our way over to Highway 19, and then continue south down, and with a game plan to make it to our evening meeting in Cuba. Well, along the way, I stumbled into this little place at the junction of Highway 24 and Highway 67, Rushville, Illinois. Gosh darn it. What an interesting, what just a fascinating town. I got one example of what made it neat. The Rushville Times. This little newspaper has been in business since 1848. And apparently, they've been operating from the same offices since I believe it's 1896, as I recall. And their publishing offices are in the same offices they've had since 1846. But this little county paper has been in business since 1848. Quite astounding. A beautiful, beautiful little downtown square. Unlike a lot of communities where the courthouse is the center of the square, the courthouse was on the northwest corner. A nice little courthouse built sometime late 19th century. Once again, food. We were on the road and it was lunchtime, so we were looking for a little place to eat, and we found the Southside Cafe. Absolutely delightful. Delightful. Everybody had gotten together there. Apparently, it was a favorite in town for Sunday after church lunch and brunch. The building itself is a huge building on the square. It was a 1879 opera house. The restaurant was in what had been a hardware store for over 100 years. And they had kept all the oak cabinetry along the walls. Food was excellent. It was nice to just listen to the locals and visit. Had a great view of the square with the fall leaves, little gazebo. But my surprises weren't over yet. I cannot resist a good theater marquee. And we were getting in the truck, pulling out of the square to leave, and I noticed, kind of hidden down about 3 blocks down the street, this old theater marquee. My only regret in this whole story is that I had a meeting to get to in Cuba, Missouri, so my time was very limited. I was taking pictures of the Princess Theater that opened in 1916. And the gentleman came out and started talking to me. First, he was real friendly. He asked if I was, his name was Chris Trone, and he was asking if I needed help or needed directions. And told him no. I says, I just was admiring his beautiful theater marquee. And he says, well, come in. You got to see what we've got here. Now, this is not a movie palace by any stretch, the crystal chandeliers and all that. It was a simple farming town theater. But get this, not only was it opened in 1916, it had been one family owned for 104 years. Chris was a former airline pilot, had taken over the theater, had it digitized, and a couple upgrades made. But the last major remodel of this theater was 1930. The marquee, the lobby, everything was 1930. It was just wonderful. And I just wished I would have had more time. We're going to be talking with Chris. I've sent him an email, and I hope to get him on the program. I want to talk to him about Rushville and the theater. It was really neat. And right across the street from the theater was an old, you could see it used to be a garage, one of the type of garages that are on in gas stations that are on the corner. That had been built in the 1920s with a kind of diagonal pull-in gas station under the roof and then the garage beside it. And the capstone said 1926. Even better, on the corners was little stones with Ford script. This had been a Ford garage and dealership that had opened in 1926. The entire town just intrigued me, no end. But unfortunately, I had a schedule to keep, so I had to cut the visit a bit short. But the theater was just, the little details from 1930. For example, over the restroom doors, there was a small frosted glass clamshell light, and it was etched with ladies and men, depending on which restroom. Just intricate little touches. Fascinating, fascinating little town. I will be returning, and we will be talking more about Rushville, Illinois. Great to see those kind of places. And I've talked a lot about, Pontiac, Illinois. Pontiac is a great town. Don't get me wrong, but this one had not been refurbished. It had never died. Most intriguing. Then we wandered down Highway 19, and I get a little frustrated. I have to laugh at myself because I get frustrated on these little backcountry 2-lane roads with traffic, especially trucks, which is one reason I try to avoid the interstate. But that's what travel was. When people talk about Route 66 with this fond nostalgia, they forget that road was often an absolute nightmare to drive because of traffic and no shoulders and twisty mountain roads. But that's where you find things. Another place that got my interest, I'd been hearing a lot about it. Somehow I had never been there. Did a cursory exploration, and I will return. We were heading south on Highway 19, and we crossed the Missouri River at Hermann, Missouri. Oh, my. Another fascinating town that is apparently at the heart of the Missouri wine country. And what I saw in my little 45-minute wander just really piqued my interest no end. Another great discovery. On the return trip, I did some checking, and I hate the Turner Turnpike in Missouri or Oklahoma bothers me, and I do pretty well in Tulsa. Oklahoma City road construction traffic had gotten frustrating. We had come through on our way east, so I charted a different course, something I hadn't done in many, many years. We hugged we caught up with Route 66 through Lebanon, Springerville, Springfield, and then Joplin, and into Baxter Springs, Kansas. And then we continued west, hugging the Oklahoma-Kansas border, Highway 166 and whatnot, through Coffeyville and on to Arkansas City. And then the next day we dropped down and drove through the Oklahoma and Texas Panhandle. That's a hard scrabble area. That was the heart of the Dust Bowl. And most of the little towns out there, I don't think have ever recovered from the Great Depression. And years ago, when I used to drive trucks through that country, the towns were pretty faded. But I was really shocked to see how empty it has gotten out there in the plains. Town after town. The old general stores, the old business districts, they've been closed for decades. But now even the little mini marts on the edges of town are boarded up and closed. And I don't know what people do for services out that way, but kind of sad. The Flint Hills of Kansas. If you get a chance to drive that area from Coffeyville west out through the Flint Hills, anybody who thinks that Kansas is a flatland, no. Beautiful country. And since we've been talking food so much on today's program, we have one more discovery to share with you. Alva, Oklahoma, kind of a bustling little town out there. We found a place called the Vanilla Bean. I'll be posting some pictures on that on our Instagram account and do a little blog post on the website at Jim Hinckley's America. Really, really a nice, eclectic little restaurant. It had a small bakery. They did everything on site except for the cheesecake, which was very good. But all their breads and everything they make on site. And it was an excellent soup and wonderful breads. Nice little restaurant. The Vanilla Bean in Alva, Oklahoma. And then I did a little bit of a photography trip around Nera Vista, New Mexico. This is an old town that I would classify it now as a true ghost town. It did pretty well up until, the last dozen years. But even the Western Star Motel now is closed and makes for some picturesque photography. Lots and lots of ruins. This is on Highway 54, just after you cross the Texas-New Mexico line, heading down towards Tucumcari. And then we spent a bit of time in Tucumcari visiting with everybody there. Check out the website, visit Tucumcari.com, Tucumcarinm.com. People think of Tucumcari, especially Route 66 folks. They get to thinking about the Blue Swallow, which they should, and Roadrunner Lodge and Motel Safari, but there's a lot more to offer. There's a whole district off Route 66, the original heart of the city, down towards the depot. And it's wore down at the heel, but it's coming back to life. Lots of good stuff there, including a theater that opened in 1935, still in operation. The trip was pretty good overall, but I made lots and lots of discoveries. Lots of places we're going to have to go back to. And I sure want to encourage everybody, if your schedule allows and you have the time, take some of these back roads, the side roads. I think it was Charles Corral, to paraphrase. He said the interstate highway has made it possible to drive coast to coast and see absolutely nothing. And I can't argue. It's nice, it's great, but it's all generic. All these little fast food places and motels, chain motels, nestled around the exits. It's really generic. But you get on the back roads through the little faded towns like Narra Vista, and you discover places like the Vanilla Bean and Don's Steakhouse and Pocahontas. That's what makes a trip really, really special. If you're looking for a great Christmas present, something special, don't know how long they're going to last. I signed a bunch of them for them at a book signing. I signed everything they had in inventory at the Route 66 Museum in Pontiac, Illinois. The gift shop, Home Again on 66 in the museum, has a big collection of my books all signed and ready to go. Pulaski County Tourism Office, they have some of my books all signed and ready to go. Mojave Museum of History and Arts. Of course, the Wagon Wheel Motel in Cuba, Missouri. They have quite a gift shop, and they have a large bookstore. And I made sure before I left that every book in their inventory had been defaced with a signature. And yesterday I was up in Oatman, and I signed books at Fast Fanny's and Jackass Junction. And then before I left, I made sure that both stores, all the books in their inventory were autographed. Yes, I agree with you. I always take the road less traveled myself, unless I'm really hard-pressed for time. And you can't be hard-pressed for time and drive up to Oatman. Anybody who's familiar with that drive knows what I mean. That's quite the highway adventure. Well, we are set up for call-ins or text messages. And if you have any questions, let's say this is an interactive program. Go ahead and give me a call here, or if you have any questions, ideas, suggestions, I'd sure like to hear them. So anybody out there want to chime in a little bit on what we've been talking about this morning, or you have some suggestions? Because I like to tell people where to go, but I also like to listen to other people and see what recommendations they've got about where to go. Yes, sir.
Hey, Jim. Yeah, I live in a state that has a lot of ghost towns in it. And like I said in the comment, I take the road less traveled and see so many things that you don't find in a travel literature.
No, you don't.
What petroglyphs? I've actually found petroglyphs up here.
Where do you live,
Montana.
Sir? Oh, Montana.
Yeah. I mean, you see things. I take people and that come visit me, and I'll take them out for the first time to show them areas, and it's like they're amazed at what I found out there that they won't see anywhere. You can't find it on Google Earth unless you know what you're looking for.
Yeah.
And I just happened to run across it. I mean, I got 4 ghost towns around me. And I mean, we're talking ghost towns. It might be 5 people living in the town.
You got to have.
It's basically completely ran down except for the houses they're living in.
You got to have a small
abandoned schools.
You got to have a small population, or the places get terribly vandalized. And the last few years, the last 5 to be specific, I am shocked and disgusted by how, and not kids, people that should know better, vandalizing some of these sites, and the graffiti has become an absolute plague.
Well, here the graffiti isn't bad. It's just that the people moved out when the interstates moved in here. They moved out, went to the big cities around me, and the places have literally weathered down to almost nothing. I mean, I've been in places here that still have old log cabins from when they first started settling this area, and I've worked on some of them for people too. But you have a lot of things out there that people just don't want to take the time, or they think they're pressed for time, but they miss some of the jewels. I mean, I've seen cars from the 1920s sitting in fields next to cabins that have trees growing through them. Completely overtaking the place, but you see some of the classic cars that didn't rust out because of the fact that it's so dry up here. But people say, "Oh, I want to go to the national park." I said, "Well, the national park's got the same thing we have around here. It's just not so many people in them. You just got to be able to get out there and find the stuff."
This Oklahoma Panhandle, I hadn't been through that country in a long time. Highway 64, Highway 274, 12, and out through the Rita Blanca National Grasslands. It's out in Boise City in Guyman, Oklahoma. And I was really, these towns, they were never big. But the Great Depression, the Dust Bowl really took them down a notch. And now, well, the young people have gone on to other opportunities. And most of these towns like Buffalo and Freedom and Cherokee, Beaver, Turpin, Hooker, there's really literally nothing left. I mean, they are just one big empty.
I have a couple towns here. One of them just south of me, about 20 miles. They were all farming towns at one time where people done all their trading and stuff because the interstate system didn't come in here till the 70s. But some of these places, they've moved a lot of the people out of them basically for convenience. And you go in there and, like one up north of me, Custer, which is on the interstate, has maybe 3 businesses in it. And most of the houses that are in the town are completely run down except for maybe a dozen. And they're basically farmers in just right outside of town there. And I'm talking about, this place, maybe it's a quarter mile in diameter, but all the farms around it are still around, and the old houses and stuff are still being used and remodeled. But there's one town just south of me called St. Xavier. It was a farm town, and it had it still stands, one of the old concrete gas stations that has a cover over the pumps. You have basically a porch right outside the door, and it's a pretty much a little jewel there. And people have built houses in there recently within the last probably 40 years, but they went dilapidated. You can tell by their design when they were pretty much built. But you get off in these little towns and you find them all over the place. And some places you go in there, there's nobody there. Nobody left. They've all left out and gone to better jobs or gone to a different place to retire. A lot of the ranches here that people say, "I'm not working ranch. Daddy died, I'm selling it off." And out of country people get it. Like we have one giant ranch up here that an Argentinian bought it because the kids didn't want to work it. And it's around 100,000 acre ranch. Yeah. And they left, You know, a lot of the kids around here have moved out and their families are sitting on the farms, getting ready to basically die. I mean, the old people are still there, but the family wants nothing to do with the farms.
No.
And it's kind of tragic. But on the other hand, I find a lot of these things while I'm prospecting.
No.
And some of these places here, some of the old guys back in the day, back in the 60s and 70s, they had core samples done on their ground. They, basically drilled to see what was in it. And some of these ranches will go for as much as $50,000 an acre.
Yeah.
And some of them won't sell their property. They said, I'm not selling it. I'm waiting, because they've core sampled and found out that their land is super, super rich in minerals, like gold and silver.
I want to thank you for calling in today. And I guess, what we'll do is we'll have to do a program about Montana in the future. But it looks like we're almost out of time here this morning. And got a couple things that I'd like to finish up with. But I want to thank you for hollering at us from Montana. And Montana is one of those great overlooked places. We're going to wrap this up this morning and kind of running out of time.
Quickly, I wanted to say, Montana is known as the treasure state for a reason.
Yes. The only problem I had with
having me on.
Oh, it's my pleasure. My pleasure. Take care, sir. That's the kind of thing, this is an interactive program. And he mentioned these gas stations, these old porticos over the station pumps. There's a really interesting one I found a couple of years ago between San Juan, New Mexico and Tucumcari on the old alignment of Route 66. And the portico has collapsed. And what they had done is taken old oil cans and beat them flat and used them as shingles. They'd covered the whole roof of that portico with oil cans. Do we have any other questions I can answer for you about today's program, about hush puppies, catfish, good food, small towns? If not, I would really, really like to thank everybody for joining us this morning, and invite your friends. We'll do this again next week, next Sunday morning, 7 o'clock. We do a bit more gum beating, share some more stories, and a little bit of fun. See if we can inspire a road trip or two. Don't forget, Car Talk from the Main Street of America. Should have that up tomorrow. Have another great podcast for you going there. Got some other projects in the works. And we'll be doing a story about our trip to Oatman yesterday real soon. But I want to thank everybody for joining us. And I hope this encourages you to get out and do a bit of exploring. And thank you. I'm going to wrap this up and bid adios. And we will continue our discussion. Send me some notes, some ideas. Check out the website, Jim Hinckley's America. And we'll have this archived there, and we'll have some more road trip stories to share with you. I've got all kinds of travel planning information on the website. And I'm working on adding recommended podcasts. I've got recommended blogs and lodging recommendations, restaurant recommendations. Take a gander.
On an old road. Take a 2-lane trip of memory.
My friends, I hope you have a great week. And until we meet again.
Come along.
Vaya con Dios.
Jim Hinckley's America. Jim Hinckley's America.
A little music there from Joe and Woody and the boys of the Road Crew. Roadcrew66.com. Take a gander at their music. See if you're not inspired.